Don't put video. Try and change to this one.
The head of the Civil Service Federation, Dr. Falasha YEMI-ESAN, our transformative permanent secretaries on this platform, directors, deputy directors, and assistant directors, as well as all other civil servants, public servants joining us on this webinar.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Good morning, ma. We can.
Good morning, ma.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma. We can hear you.
Good. It looks like the chat room is having some technical issues. So since you can hear me, I'll just go ahead to welcome everybody this morning to today's webinar on digitalization. I want to welcome the permanent secretaries that have joined online. I also like to welcome all civil servants that are online. Please, so that we can move very fast, when somebody is talking, please let your mics be turned off. It is when too many mics are turned on that there's a lot of noise in the background and there are a lot of disruptions. So kindly check to ensure that your mics are turned off, please. And let us also try to learn how to use the function of raising hands, so that while we go on, when it's time for question and answers, we can use the raise hand function on our screens to indicate that we have something to say. And once this is done, you'll be invited to speak, and then you can unmute yourself. Please, there are still so many mics that are not muted. I don't want to ask the administrator to unmute everybody. This is so that when you want to unmute yourself, you can do it easily. So please, let us put our microphones on mute. This is absolutely important, please, so that the meeting can go on smoothly. Okay, so good morning once again, and thank you all for joining this webinar and for joining on time. We wanted to start at 12 so that we can spend 1 hour, 1.5 hours together, and then we can go back to our offices to continue with our assignments. This webinar on digitalization is the first in a series of webinars that the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation will be holding. As we're all aware that we are implementing the Federal Civil Service Strategy and Implementation Plan, which we call FC 25. And by the grace of God, this plan is well on course. And we want to have a lot of consultations and inclusiveness. That is why we decided that we should have this webinar series. The overall objective of this webinar series is to provide vital updates on the progress recorded in the implementation of the plan as it relates to each of the 6 building blocks of FC25. I'm sure we all remember the building blocks of FC25. The first is capability building and talent management. The second is performance management system. The third is the human resource model of the IPPIS. The fourth is innovation. Fifth is digitalization. And the sixth is staff welfare and enhancing the value proposition of civil servants. Today, we're talking about digitalization. You will all recall that our drive to digitalize the civil service took an unprecedented turn at the peak of COVID-19 pandemic. You recall that at that time, we couldn't gather together because of the regulations. And so we had to continue work and devise new methods of doing our work. And that was when we brought to fore the need to digitalize the federal civil service. And at that point, we were having a lot of online meetings, and we thought it's important for us to have a policy that will guide all these virtual meetings. So at that time, we came up with a policy on virtual meetings in the civil service. And we will talk more about that policy much later during this webinar series. After then, we also issued a circular that, I think that circular was issued sometime in June of 2020. And that circular mandated all MDAs to digitize their records. That means that all files and records should be digitized. That was a precursor to the digitalization. And we also gave specifications for the type of scanners and the type of equipment that we would need for this process. And so because of this circular, the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation established a scanning center. You can see from the video being shared on the screen that this is a simple scanning center, and this is what we want all MDAs to copy. Some MDAs have adopted the simple scanning center, and some have even gone ahead to improve on what we have here in the Office of the Head of Service. In addition, we have explored and initiated partnerships for the deployment of the electronic content management platform. And so the office is working in collaboration with the Africa Initiative for Governance, which is an independent, not-for-profit organization focused on driving public sector transformation in Africa. And so that some of the gains from the collaboration with AIG and also in planning for the digitalization service-wide is that we did a review of ECMS operations and processes. We also did together a review of documented functional and technical requirements for any ECM platform. We then went on to develop standard operating procedures. And then we established a work plan for change and communication management. And to ensure the success of the digitalization process, the Office of the Head of Service has been doing a lot to ensure that we record a lot of success in this drive for digitalization. We conducted a service-wide ECM readiness survey, and we took 35 MDAs into consideration, just so that we will know the sequence with which we will go with the MDAs that are ready to commence the digitalization process. Deployment of digitalization in the Office of the Head of Service and in all MDAs. We talked about the readiness survey. We talked about the provision of the requirements for all equipment, both hardware and software, that will be needed. I also said that we've trained staff, end user training of staff from 16 MD on readiness for digitalization. We've also conducted training on ISO certification, and we've done a sensitization program for directors of reform, ICT, and human resource management in 35 MDAs. At the end of that workshop, we developed a roadmap for the replication of the ECM at MDA level. That roadmap will be taken after my overview of the digitalization process. I need to say at this point that the digitizing of all our files is absolutely important. And we expect that the baseline year for digitizing files, all files, is 2010. That means that all files opened in that year or after that year should be digitized. I'll say that again. All files opened in the year 2010 or after that year are the files that we should all digitize. It's also pleasing to me to note that the push for automation in the ministry has been received positively by most MDAs and is being passionately driven by permanent secretaries, and this is very, very commendable. However, it's important for me to say that there's a need for effective coordination of the process of the ECM implementation in all MDAs. It's important to note that the ECM implementation is very systematic in nature, where there are different sequences of activities to be carried out. And it's important that we carry out these activities in the predetermined sequence so that we don't put the cart before the horse. It's very, very important for us. And this is also in accordance with global best practice, that there is a process we must follow so that we will get the outcome that we need. It's important for our outcome to be optimal. Otherwise, the system that we're trying to develop might have a lot of hitches and might not perform the way we want to perform it. Like I said before, we will talk about the sequencing after my overview of the digitalization process. It's also important for me to talk about the upgrade of the local area network infrastructure in MDAs. We recall that I've been saying that Galaxy Backbone is working to upgrade the LAN infrastructure in MDAs. And I have a list of about over 20 MDAs where Galaxy is presently working in. And it's important for us to give them all the cooperation that they need so that we can get the desired results. Without the upgrade of the local area network, it will be very, very difficult for us to go on with the digitalization process. So permanent secretaries, directors, ICT, kindly give Galaxy Backbone all the support that they need so that we can drive this effectively. I talked briefly on the national policy on virtual engagement. I've asked them to put that policy on our website so that everybody can have a copy. That policy was approved by the Federal Executive Council on the 20th of October 2020. It's important for all of us to acquaint ourselves with that policy on virtual engagements in service. It's also important for me to talk about capacity building. If we're going to attain the desired result from digitalization, it's important for us to train ourselves, while MDAs should also embark on massive training of officers in MDAs. The Office of the Head of Service on its own, like I said, has tried to go out to train some officers in the MDAs. It's important for these officers that have been trained by the Office of the Head of Service, it's important for them to in turn go ahead and continue training of officers in their own MDs. Please, this is very, very, very important. Training and retraining and tooling of officers in the MDAs is one very important thing that we must embark on and we must prioritize as permanent secretaries. And in addition to that, we must make sure that even us as civil servants, we must endeavor to train ourselves. Anybody that is not computer literate at this time, please go and get some form of computer training. It's absolutely important. I've also asked permanent secretaries to ensure that their ICT departments also engage in a systematic training of all staff in the MDAs on basic ICT knowledge. Please, this is absolutely important. We don't want to leave anybody out of the digitalization process. And so it's important for us to ensure that everybody is on board. Everybody is on board. It's absolutely important. And so, ladies and gentlemen, notwithstanding whatever it is that we are doing, I want to emphasize that as a service, we must continue to look ahead and remain very creative by exploring and making the best of the opportunities that we have right in front of us today, particularly during challenging times as this. It's important for us to look inwards and become very, very innovative. Thus, it is important for us to remain purpose-driven and dedicated, and to exhibit the highest level of transparency and professionalism. It is important that we place a very high premium and pride in what we do, because the true worth of anything depends on the value that is attached to it. I cannot but also appreciate every one of you for the work you do, and also for the successes that we have recorded thus far. It's important for us also not to rest on our oars, but we must, with greater vigor, confidence, and courage, rise to the challenge of evolving a new civil service of our dreams. Once again, I thank you all for honoring our invitation and wish us all very fruitful interactions today. Thank you, and God bless us all. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam, for those wonderful opening remarks. Transformative Permanent Secretaries, Directors, and all other public servants here present. You can see from the opening remarks why our amiable head of service has herself the sobriety, the digital madam. It is now, she has again reiterated the need for all of us to be computer literate. It is now compulsory for every civil servant to be computer literate. You either be with us or you will be left at the train station, as she has already alluded. Yes, without wasting much time, with your kind permission, I will now call on the Director ICT in the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation to give us a brief on the communique from the Enterprise Content Management Roundtable conference that was held not quite long ago. Director ICT.
Thank you, Head of Service. Thank you. The permanent secretaries present, all distinguished civil servants that are also present on the Zoom. You may recall that on the 17th of July, precisely, the ECM Roundtable Conference was held at Federal Ministry, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Rotunda Hall, where directors of PRS, HRM, Reform Coordination, and ICT, also directors of procurement were invited for that roundtable conference. We planned for 150 participants, but we are happy to inform us that 200 participants eventually graced the occasion. That is more than what we planned for, or more than the number that we envisaged. So that to us was a clear indication that the entire service is ready and is embracing the enterprise content management solution implementation in their MDAs. During the roundtable conference, we had 4 presentations, and the 4 presentations were also well digested. And at the end of the roundtable conference, we have some conclusions that were made. And it is of paramount importance that we note that at the end of the roundtable conference, we reviewed the steps to be followed to have a successful implementation of ECM in our NDAs. And the head of service has graciously approved that all these documents can now be sent to all MDAs, but we are going to just briefly mention some of the highlights. That is, each MDA is going to have the communique that was reached, the communique that was developed, and also the revised steps to the successful implementation of ECM system in the MDAs. Let me just show some of the highlights. Okay, so this is the revised steps to the successful implementation of enterprise content management solution in the MDAs. We mentioned that the first step, which is always for the MDA to establish an ECM project management team. This has not changed. This is still the first step. Then the second step, which is the development of capacity of PMT members. We want to mention here that many MDAs have demonstrated that they are ready and they have been developing the capacity of the PMT members, and they have also been conducting sensitization workshops in their MDAs. Some of them we have been invited, and some of them we are also being informed. Then we have step 8. We are jumping some of the steps to conduct ECM staff change management survey. We have to find out, after the staff have been sensitized, how much of the understanding and how much of the change management strategy or change management training and workshop have been understood by the members of the staff. Then to develop the departmental SOPs, these has already been done in all the MDAs. We want to report here that all the 35 federal MDAs, federal ministries have conducted successfully the development of the SOP in their ministries. Then we have the creation of the MDA scanning center. Just like the head of service said, we showed a brief demonstration of the OHCSF scanning center. And we also want to report here that some MDAs have also been doing well. Some have contacted us, some visited the Office of Head of Civil Service of the Federation, and we showed them the scanning center, and we also briefed them on some of the procedures. But we told them that these particular revised steps for the completion of ECM in the MDAs will be released at this webinar that the head of service is planning. So the steps are now ready, and we are going to send them to all MDAs. Then we also have the commencement of document scanning in the MDAs. We would like to mention here, especially to inform us of the directive that was given to the head of service, to us in head of service here, about the usage of our staff. The head of service made it, or directed, that we should have our own staff trained. Instead of having contractors or vendors doing the scanning of our files in the offices, we trained our staff, and then they are the ones you saw in that video. They are the ones who scanned all the files. Files that were opened in the year 2010 and after. That is the baseline year that we started in head of service. Then the 14th step, which is the establishment of an ECM vendor selection team. This must be conducted in the MDA if the MDA is making use of the the appropriation in the MDA, then it is strictly a baby or an affair from the procurement department and others that are related in the PMT. However, if you have donor agencies or you have some other partners, then it is very important that they also become part of the vendor selection team for transparency and for them to also be carried along. Then we also have the production or the preparation of the RFP. That is the request for proposal. Then also we have the final stage, which is the identification of preferred ECM vendor. After the vendor has been preferred, after the vendor has been selected rather, we also mentioned that it is important for us to have a clearance from NITDA. Here, there are two forms of clearance. One clearance is actually for the software or the implementation software that we have selected. Then we also have the second one, which has to do with the project clearance from NITDA. The project, that is the ECM project in your MDA, will also require clearance from NITDA. That's the second form of clearance. The setting up of the project management team, project management office is the next. When all these have been done, we also have in the guideline for us to have selection of the users, the ECM users. The ECM users must be trained, and then we have conduct of professional ICT training for ICT staff. This is different from the mandatory training that the head of service mentioned. The mandatory training is on 23, which is the conduct of ICT proficiency training for all MDA staff. And then this moves down to the assignment of PCs and other equipment to users. And then finally, we have to do what we call trial testing of the new ECM. Before we can actually go live, we have to do parallel running of the ECM. That is, we run it parallelly with the manual system. While the manual system is still going on, we run the parallel ECM system. And once we are satisfied, then we have the last stage, which is the go live. The go live actually must signify that we need to discontinue the manual operations, and then eventually we have our fully blown enterprise content management implementation in the MDA. So all these will be sent to all the MDAs electronically. We are not going to send any paper documents any longer. So these documents and the communique, each MDA should be waiting for us to send to them. We also have, the head of service has already given an update on the MDA LAN that has been conducted by Galaxy, so we are not going into that. But we also want us to note that once we have started digitalization, there are some other things that need to be implemented in the MDAs. Most importantly, we talk about the issuance of computers. Then we also talk about the emerging issues after digitalization. Let me share the screen so that we can all know what we are talking about. Okay, so we should also inform us that sometime after digitalization, depending on our planning, we should also know that we have some threats because we are no more using the manual physical file system. We should also be prepared and also plan for cybersecurity concerns. There are different threats, and we should also be looking for the mitigants. That is all those things that we can do in order for us to plan against security threats. We have the cyber attacks leading to what we refer to as the DDoS, that is the distributed denial of service. We also have some other cyber attacks leading to loss of data and information. Naturally, we also have some threats due to natural disasters and man-made disasters. Malwares are also there. We have antiviruses and virus concerns. Then we also have threats to endpoints, where we have issues like stolen identity, which can also lead to data leakages and rogue accessing our systems. Social engineering is also there, where we have things like phishing, where our passwords are being sourced over the internet, and then we can actually have intruders into the system. We are saying this because it is no longer one person's affair. Since we are all connected to a common network, and also because we are all expected to work digitally, our work needs maximum protection. So, what are the mitigants to cyber security threats? Number one, top management support for implementation of cyber security programs, which I believe will not have any issue in this regard because of the demonstration of ECM in the MTS. Then proper level of user education. We need to let our people know from the highest proficient user to the least proficient user, because an attack on one is actually an attack of the entire system. We also need to understand what we refer to as identity management system. It needs to mitigate against us having people that are not of the same identity with the original user. Okay, we also have cybersecurity monitoring and incidents response. All these are mitigants that are supposed to be consideration. Immediately, we have started to implement our ECM system in the MDA. To end this presentation, we just want to talk about some 5 basic rules of cybersecurity so that we all start from here, imbibing it and putting ourselves in preparation for such a negative attack. Number 1, we have this rule, or this basic rule, which is talking about us thinking very much before we click on a link. This can be a very, very serious source of attack to our system. If you are not sure of who is sending this link to you, please, you have to think very well before you click on that link. We also have the issue of using very strong passwords, because each user in the ECM will be given user identities. Identity in the form of roles and passwords. So we need to imbibe that kind of attitude to build very strong passwords. Number 3, you lock the device when you are away. Do not connect to unknown devices. Your flash, external hard disks are also sources of threats to the system. This time around, not only your own system, but the entire system. Then, 5th basic rule, we need to carry out regular backups in our MDAs so that in case anything that we didn't plan for happens, we still have our data. Thank you very much, and God bless us. So we are now open for questions. Questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeni Dada, Director ICT, Office of the Auditor Civil Service of the Federation, for those briefing on the communique at the end of the ECM roundtable that was held some time back. As you have heard from the conductor of our train, of our digital train, the Eureka moment for getting the federal service is fast approaching. Okay, I think I have a few questions here that have been sent online. Let me read that. There is one from it's a question as well as a comment. So let me read it. I'd like to thank the head of the Civil Service of the Federation for the remarkable and innovative way she is doing to transform the civil public service. The initiative to digitalization and digitalizing government business is very apt, especially in an era where termites are able to eat up records that should account for spending of over 17 billion naira. My question is, what is the office doing to ensure that all MDAs are brought on board and this innovation obtained? This is from Bello from Zampara. Another question, what effort is the office making to enhance good internet provision as a prerequisite and preparatory process? Thirdly, please, as for the planning officers posted last year and those awaiting their result, has the planning officer cadre been cancelled? Ma. Again, to the Director of ICT. what backup system and infrastructures will be made available to mitigate loss of data and files in the event the unexpected happens? From Okediji Olubosu Ayinde. Another question. I would like to have the materials on digitalization in all MDAs. Okay, there's that question. How can I get them? Okay, how can I get them? The materials on digitalization. Okay, in there on our website. Another question. This is from a principal admin officer, PPID. Said, good afternoon, Madam, Head of Service of the Federation, all permanent secretaries, my chairman, and all civil servants. As we all know, power, electricity is a major issue in our dear nation. What are the plans for MDS to have an uninterrupted power supply to accommodate this digitalization process? Mr. Bagi. Thank you very much. I think we might need to respond to the questions before we can take some more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just respond to a few, and then Director ICT too will respond to some of them. This webinar is one of the ways we want every civil servant to be enlightened about what we're doing concerning digitalization. The first question was that, how can this be spread across MDAs, and that how would every MDA become digitalized? And what we're saying is that once the core ministries have been able to go a long way, in that process, automatically, all the parastatals and agencies that they supervise would not have any choice but to join the train. That is why we're encouraging every ministry to start work immediately. And we know that this is a process. It's more like a marathon, it's not a sprint. Because here in the office of the head of service, it has taken us close to 2-3 years to get to the point where we are right now. But it's important for ministries to start. I think the most important thing is to start. And as you move on, and another important thing is that as you start, you must make sure you prioritize digitalization and make sure you have budgetary allocations to assist in the work you're doing. I've gotten some report from some permanent secretaries that they've also gotten partners that will work with them in their various ministries on the digitalization drive. And I think that is very innovative. That is what we did here in the office of the head of service. So permanent secretaries should look out of the box and try to get private people that will work with them on the digitalization process. However, it's also important to put something in the budget. Thank God we're talking about it now. We have not 2020. We also said this last year, and some PAMSECs that put it in their budget for 2022 have actually been able to go very far. But if you haven't put it in your budget for 2022, please, this is the time to ensure that you are able to budget for it for 2023 and beyond. And so it's about, for me, I think the important thing is to get partnerships to work with us on these things. It's very, very important. And I'm happy to say that some permanent secretaries have actually been able to get partners to work with them on the digitalization process. So I don't think funding should be a major problem. Yes, and talking about internet provision, we also said that Galaxy Backbone is working hard to ensure that the internet that they give to MDAs is able to carry the work that we must do. And we keep meeting with Galaxy. There's actually a committee that has been set up, and we are working with Galaxy. We meet with them very, very regularly because we know that their own part in this drive is critical. And so we're working very closely with Galaxy Backbone. Somebody also talked about provision of power and electricity. We're working both with the Ministry of Power and also insisting that ministries now begin to look at alternative power sources to drive the ministries. Those two should help us in our drive. It's important for us to start looking beyond the power holding company and what we can get from them. We must start looking at alternative sources of power to drive the process. The last question I'm going to attend to here is the one on planning officers, and to tell the person asking that this webinar is a specific and particular webinar. And please, Director Communications, please, when there are questions outside of the topic we're dealing with, please just keep it. It's important for us to be disciplined, to stick to what we're here to address is absolutely important. Otherwise, questions will come from everywhere, and then we will lose focus, and we cannot afford to do that. I'll ask the Director ICT to attend to the other more technical questions.
Thank you, ma'am. The head of service. There are two questions for my concern. That is, number one, the loss of data. What happens? Yeah. We should state strictly here that when you are selecting your vendor, the process is also going to run alongside with the equipments that the vendor is supposed to install the software. That is, we have servers. 3 of such servers are the application server, the database server, and the storage servers. The storage servers are expected to store your data, especially on a day-to-day basis, that the data is growing. And the best practice is to have backup on site, that is your storage servers on site, and also to have backups of your data off site. So you can continue to enjoy the dividends of digitalization without any loss of data once you go this route. Then the second one has to do with these materials that we are sharing here. That is the steps and also the communique to the last ECM roundtable conference that was held in Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm sure that question is also came before the presentation, because during the presentation we mentioned that we are going to distribute all this to the core MDAs. And from the directive of the head of service in her address, we had her saying that all parastatals that are under a particular core MDA will have to be looking up to that MDA for guidance. And then we expect also that the MDAs that have parastatals under them will also be sensitizing and also be sharing many of these documents that will be sent to the MDAs. I'm also aware that the head of service has given directive even to Ross in head of service here to go ahead and conduct the SOP for all our parastatals in the office of head of service. And I'm sure at the appropriate time, she will also give such directive to the MDAs so that whatever is happening in the MDAs can be replicated in, whatever is happening in the core MDAs can be replicated in the agencies that are under such core MDAs. So the materials will be sent to the core MDAs, and we expect core MDAs to, in return, send them to all parastatals that are under them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There were some questions on digitizing files from 2010 and what will happen to the other documents that have not been digitized, or what will happen to the documents after digitizing. I know that there's a regulation in the service that says that after 10 years, each MDA will need to record all its files and all its documents and take them to the archive centers. We have national archives under the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, and they are the ones that we should send all the old files and documents to, the national archives. I think that it's even high time that we start doing that. All the files that are littering all our offices, please, permanent secretaries, let us take an inventory of all those files and send them to the national archives in Kaduna. I know that there's one in Kaduna. There's also one in Lagos. So please let us ensure that we do that. It will also help to declutter our offices. I know in some MDAs, there are rooms and rooms and rooms of these old files. So please, if you have files that are very old, please let us do that. And why we chose 2010 is also because of that regulation of 10 years. Because if we started in 2020 and going back 10 years is 2020. So that is why we chose that start date of 2010. So please let us also, it's also an opportunity to declutter our offices. Thank you. Go on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our digital madam, for those wonderful answers. Being supported by our able conductor, Director ICT, Mr. Adeni Dada. With the kind permission of the head of the civil service of the Federation, we would like to take more questions because some people have been having their hands raised for a very long time. So I think we should allow them to ask questions. But please, in answering your question, please just go straight to the question and be mindful of the fact that this webinar is solely on digitalization. Please, nothing should be asked outside digitalization. Mr. Kingsley Tobichku, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon, Kingsley.
Good afternoon, ma. Mommy. Good afternoon, ma. This is really indeed a welcome development that is taking place at the head of service. We are really enlightened and we are happy. Well, one of my questions is that how do we sustain, how do we make sure that this development is being sustained after your tenure, after this present administration? Because one of the problems Nigeria is having is continuity. So how do we make sure that this thing is being sustained so that other administrations also, when they come in, they will continue with it? Thank you, ma.
Thank you. The next
Mr. Alabi OS. Alabi OS.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good afternoon, ma, and everyone. I am Alabi Olusegun Sunday. I work for Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. Yeah, I want to commend the efforts of the ministry concerning this digitalization, and I pray that it works out and it continues. as we desire. Now, one of my questions is that is there any standard for the ECM that all the MDAs will use, so that it won't be that one department is using one, another one is using another one, and when it gets to integration, we'll be having problems. So because like my organization, we have been on it to have the DMS, workflow and all sorts all this while before this issue of ECM come up. So we are looking at waiting for like a standard that we use so that it will be a seamless integration with the MDA wide later on. So I'm just asking if there's anything like that so that we can work with. Then concerning some of the things that I mentioned, like the trainings and even the documents, letters they send to MDAs, it looks like some of us that are in the agencies, we are left out because we have not received any letter regarding these trainings and all sorts. So, and it means that we are left out of this drive to digitalization. So, we should find a way to, so that all this communication will get to us also. Then okay, this one is actually, anyway, it has to do with digitalization too. I am aware that some ICT units in MDAs, they are not directly a unit or a department on their own, and which I know that advocacies have been going on. So I want to know what we are doing regarding this, and also to say that those that are actually heading the ICT unit, or that ICT unit is under them, that they should be asked to be certified by the CPN. CPN is the government agency that certifies all the professional IT professionals. So it is important that they are certified so that they will have the qualification to head those departments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You asked like 10 questions in one.
Dr. Habiba. Dr.
DD Communications, please mention that name again. Most people didn't hear that.
Dr. Memuna Abdullahi. Dr. Memuna, sorry, Dr. Memuna Abdullahi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma.
Dr. Memuna Abdullahi.
Speaking.
Go ahead.
Speaking.
Memuna,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a very highly welcome initiative. My concern is the cyberspace. I want to know if, if you are getting the services of cyber security experts to man our cyber spaces, or you will train some of the ICT staff in various MDAs as cyber security experts, because it's key. You know, most of these cyber spaces are being hacked by unscrupulous people. So we need to guard against such. Thank you, ma.
Thank you. You didn't tell us where you're calling from. What
I'm a director with Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, ma.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think Samuel Anzaku, Samuel. Anzaku Samuel, are you still there? Anzaku Samuel. Anzaku Samuel.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning,
yeah,
ma'am.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm a deputy director with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Okay.
I actually just want to commend our indefatigable head of service. Honestly, I think it is something that is very good for the system. A lot of these things is already happening all over the world. And I can see that with the renewed interest being shown by the head of service, the civil service by the grace of God, we're seeing a revolution. And I think it's my prayer, and I hope that we'll continue to key into this. Congratulations in advance, ma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Head of Service, ma. I'm made to understand that there are some questions, there are some people needing to ask some questions from the Obasanjo Hall. Can we admit them?
Okay, yes, let's take them and then we can answer some.
Okay, Obasanjo Hall, are you with us? Obasanjo Hall, yes.
Yes, we are.
Yes, okay. Go ahead with your question, please.
Good afternoon, our digital head of service. Good afternoon, all. It's not really a question. I want to make an appeal. I'm the director in RC. My appeal is for the head of service to urgently consider digitalizing the operations of the National Record Center and digitizing its content. This is key to effective and efficient management of the records of the federal public service. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just go through some of the questions. Sustainability of this program. You will discover that virtually all the permanent secretaries are online with us today at this webinar. And this is because the implementation of the digitalization process has been decentralized. The implementation has been decentralized. And so permanent secretaries are those responsible for the digitalization of processes in their ministries. What the Office of the Head of Service is just doing right now is to encourage the permanent secretaries, make sure that we give all the support, all the guidelines, just to make it easy for the permanent secretaries to continue the work. And that is why the Office of the Head of Service also is leading in front. All these things we're asking permanent secretaries to do in their ministries, we have done in Office of the Head of Service. So we are using ourselves as guinea pigs so that permanent secretaries can look to the Office of the Head of Service for guidance, but the process of digitalization has been decentralized, and it is now permanent secretaries that are responsible for the processes in their ministries. The standards have been provided by the framework that the Director ICT went through. We won't go through it again. We will leave it on our website. We will also distribute to all permanent secretaries and all directors ICT. If you want a copy, you can download from the Office of the Head of Service website. I also acknowledge some parastatals and agencies that have gone ahead of their ministries. Please, if you work in one of such parastatals and you need assistance, please feel free to reach out to the Office of the Head of Service. We will give guidance. If your ministry is not ready yet and the parastatals under the ministries are going ahead, please reach out to the Office of the Head of Service. We are here to assist you. We don't want anybody to be left out. We do not want anybody to be left out of the process. The Director ICT went to great lengths to talk about security of the system, to talk about possible threats. It's important for us that we are aware that these threats exist. And so we are working to mitigate the threats to the system. is when we play dumb and we think nothing will happen, that will be taken unawares. And we're going to train and retrain and train ICT staff on how to recognize possible threats and how to deal with those possible threats. So please be rest assured that we know that these threats exist and that we are working to ensure that we will not fall prey to any of these threats. That is why we're recognizing the threats. We're also working closely with NIDA. And that is why we're also saying that permanent secretaries should pass their software through NIDA. NIDA will ensure conformity of the systems, the software that each ministry is going to use. It's important for us that we pass our software through NIDA and get approval. We in the Office of the Head of Service we've done that. So please make sure, and it's important for us to be able, the software to be able to talk to each other. That is one thing that NIDA also ensures will happen. So please, no MDA should go ahead and implement anything that NIDA has not approved. This is absolutely important. Record center, you mean that you're not talking with your permanent secretary enough. So please go back to PAMSEC CMO. We've already been talking about digitizing all the records in Record Center. So please go back and talk with him. Director ICT, is there anything out of all these questions that you want to reiterate?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, the head of service. Just to further highlight the item number 22 on our steps, which says conduct ICT professional training for ICT staff. So we don't need to emphasize this. However, some of these trainings that are meant for mitigating against cyber attacks or that are meant for cyber security trainings, you will consult us, but then we can also mention some of them. We have the CEH, that is cyber security certified ethical cyber security. Then also we have CISSP, that is certified information system security professional. Maybe we should also say this. The head of service has given directive that henceforth, all the trainings that will be carried out for professionals in ICT in particular for this ECM implementation must be those trainings that will eventually have certification. So any training that we are planning will be followed by certification examinations, and they will be in line with global best practices. So some of these certified trainings are also going to be lined up service-wide for all ICT professionals. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. There's also something I was going to talk about, resistance to change. Resistance to change. Somebody asked the question on resistance to change. I think that this webinar, that is a service-wide webinar, and all the other webinars is an attempt, to talk directly to civil servants and on the need that we must change. We don't want to remain an archaic civil service. We do not want to remain an archaic civil servant. And that is why we are insisting that we talk directly one-on-one with civil servants. We also give them an opportunity also to ask questions where they are not sure, to react to the change that is happening. Change is constant, and change is part of growth. It's only a system that does not want to grow that resists change. And any system that resists change and does not change will be left aside. Everybody will move ahead, and that system, people will find alternative ways of doing things and leave that system on its own. So I'm encouraging civil servants, please do not resist change. Change is the only constant thing. Change is important to all of us. Let us embrace the change and actually become champions of the change. If it is a good change, let us all become champions of that change, and God will help us. DD Communications, please take the last set of questions. It's already 1:30. I have another meeting at 1:30. Let's take the last round of questions. And then please, all the questions, you can also continue to ask questions on this webinar. We'll provide answers to all your questions. You can also leave your questions on all our social media platforms. We will also provide answers on these platforms. But please, if there are still some hands that are raised, let us attend to them.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ma, for the wonderful opportunity to ask another series of questions to be asked. Now call on Bello Sarki. Bello.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Continue. We can hear you, please. Go on.
All right, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Bello Sarki. I'm talking from your office, Civil Service Transformation Department, ma'am.
Okay.
The project here, ma'am, is a very huge cost, and considering which is an issue of a soft factor of development, which is infrastructure of the digitalization. It's as costly as constructing road and other things. It might even be more. I suggest that can we establish a digital unit or desk officers in all the MDAs? We are the compulsory monthly training of every staff of the MDA as part of a departmental schedules for knowledge acquisition, exchange, and management. And then number 3 is, can we revive the peer review mechanism, which was in the office, in the Civil Service Transformation Department, so that it can monitor the compliance of all these your laudable this thing, ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you.
Adeni Banjo.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me, Banjo Adeni?
Yes. Adeni
Okay.
Banjo. We hear you.
Yes. Good afternoon, ma. My name is Banjo Adeni. I'm an Assistant Chief Agric Officer with Federal Ministry of Agriculture. I'm in the Department of Pest Control. I want to thank you for the opportunity you have given all of us to be able to talk and even listen to know what is going on. So even if there is any changes in future, we understand what is going on. But my own contribution is this. I don't know if it is possible, since we're going digital now. I don't know if it is possible for every civil servant to have a unique digital identity that we can now use to log in to access our own files that is in Abuja or wherever it is, and to do some of the updates ourselves. That is just what I wanted to ask, ma. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the last person, Didi, please.
Okay, the last person, Basi Okon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Ma.
Yeah, good afternoon, Basi. How are you?
I'm better than good, Ma.
Yeah,
My
good.
name is Jekun. Yeah, I'm from Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development. Mine is an appeal. Please, please permit me to appeal that during when the trainings are up for cybersecurity professionals to in the scheme of things, please, I appeal that young people in the service should be looked out for. Young people who are passionate about cybersecurity to be trained and their capacities increased to man our cyberspace. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the questions that we have to answer now is about I think the only one really, most of them were suggestions. The unique digital identity. I think we have resolved service-wide to use our official emails for transaction. We're working with Galaxy Backbone also to ensure that all the role players, that is every civil servant, will activate their email addresses, and we would use that for digitalization so that we don't create another layer of process. So since every civil servant is supposed to have their email addresses, that is what we're going to use. I've also seen a lot of question on equipment, hardware, software, and they don't have enough computers. My suggestion or my comment on that is that by the time your MDA is ready to start, we would get systems for everybody. We've started in the Office of the Head of Service. We've gotten private people to donate tablets to the office for the digitalization process. And I'm sure ministries also can get well-meaning Nigerians. We're also talking with local vendors on how to get tablets at discounted rates for civil servants. So there's a lot of work going on. And I can assure you that every civil servant that has been trained and can operate a system will get a system. We're also working on guidelines on using systems in service, because we've also noticed that when government provides these gadgets to civil servants, sometimes when they retire, they go away with these gadgets, and then we have to start all over again. But going forward, we've developed guidelines that will guide the use of these gadgets and that we would employ for digitalization, so that, even when a civil servant retires and the civil servant has not bought the gadget, you will drop it and somebody else that is going to take over that office. What we're doing really is that the gadgets will now be attached to offices and not officers. There's a difference. If a gadget is attached to the office of the head of service, for example, when I'm leaving, I must leave the gadget in the office of the head of civil service of the Federation. So that is the plan we're working on, and we have developed guidelines. There's also an option for civil servants that will rather buy the gadgets, but if you are buying gadgets, because of the history and all the documents you have treated on that gadget, the one that will be provided for you is attached to the office and it is not your personal gadget. So please, it's important for us to also understand this. Going forward, the next webinar on digitalization will also talk about these guidelines that we have prepared for the use of gadgets in the public service. We've run out of time today. If there are any more questions, please leave them on the platform. We'll continue to answer the questions. We will also put a recording of the webinar. We've recorded this webinar. We'll put a recording of this webinar on our website so that those that came late can go back to the website to listen. I think we'll also put it on our Facebook page so that if you want to listen from again and again, you can go to also to our Facebook and other social media handles. You will get a recording of this webinar there. Thank you very much, permanent secretaries, for staying through. Thank you, participants, civil servants, for joining the webinar. We will continue next month with another topic in our webinar series. Thank you and have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
It is on this note that we have come to the end of
Thank you, ma'am.
Level of development. What we do and don't do matters. It is our duty to deliver public services. There may be times when we are asked to do things we know we shouldn't do, but if we fail to fulfill our duties in an ethical manner and with integrity, the public we serve will suffer. It is not just when we neglect to do our work, it is also about the way we do our work. If we work in ways that are outdated and inefficient, it will take a lot more time to do a lot less. We cannot continue working this way. We need to embrace technology and move into the digital future where work is faster and more efficient. We want to live in a country where everyone is treated fairly and receives the same quality public service. So, rather than serving our own interests with greed, we need to put the interests of our people first. So, by embracing a good work ethic and more efficient systems, better technologies, and law-abiding public servants, we can build a more prosperous Nigeria. And by building this Nigeria now, our country will be capable of giving our people a better life in the future.
It takes all of us, government, private sector, civil society, and citizens,
are civil servants, arriving late for work.